What we want to look at now is something called a radical expression. The cheap way of saying it is square roots, but not all radical expressions are square roots. Some are cube roots and fourth roots and 64th roots. We don't care about those. We're not going to see much of those. But we do care about the idea of how to solve a radical expression. And to do so, well, we need to figure out what radical expressions look like and how to use them. For example, let's look at the square root of 81. Basically, I'm being asked is what times what makes an 81? And that would be a 9. Let's look at another way that we can kind of play around with these. What if I have the square root of 9, but there's a negative outside, so negative square root of 9. What does that become? Well, the negative just stays there. The square root only affects the 9. So what's the square root of 9? 3. So the square root, or negative square root 9 equals negative 3. What if I had a nasty fraction? 4 over 49. Well, again, don't worry about fractions. Fractions aren't that scary. But the ones I chose, well, you might recognize that 4, well, there's like a 2 involved, and a 49, there's like a 7. Well, you're absolutely right. And one way to look at this is, I like to break down the numerator and the denominator. So I have the square root of 4 over the square root of 49, and then I can recognize very easily the square root of 4 is a 2, and the square root of 49 is a 7. So my final solution is 2/7. Sometimes you're going to see them in decimal form. And let's kind of give you some more room here. That's square root of 0.0064. And fortunately, again, we see a 64, and we know there's something going on with that. But what times what makes this particular solution? And you can crack out your black box if you want and start playing around with some numbers. But after a while, we'll discover that 0.08 times itself produces 0.0064. Another way to look at some radical expressions. What if I got a radical expression that's got some work still left to be done? What do I do with this? Well, if everything's underneath the same radical expression, well, go ahead and see if you can combine terms or do some other types of things. So 36 plus 64, that's 100. And the square root of 100, or what times itself, equals 100. That would be 10. Now I chose this last example because sometimes we're going to see something like this. Many students will look at that and say, well, that's awfully close like the last one. Maybe we can do the exact same thing, just kind of add them together and make them square root of 100. Well, we can't add these together. One thing with radicals that we'll discover is you can only add radicals that are, well, the exact same thing. So I just have to look at it individually. The square root of 36 is a 6. The square root of 64 is an 8. And I'm left with 6 plus 8, which equals 14. So you can see on those last two examples how something very similar has two different results. So kind of be careful about that when you're doing your homework and looking out for which way am I supposed to go, what's happening here. And we're going to have plenty of practice as we continue on.